afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Gitelis. I'm the founder and CEO of PatientIQ. I'm very excited for the opportunity to speak with you all this morning about a very exciting project we're working on in collaboration with the AAOS, and that is to build their next generation fracture and trauma registry. In my presentation today, what I plan to cover is first a little bit of background information just about who we are, PatientIQ, and then also we'll jump right into the technical project for what we're building with the AAOS and why we think this is going to unlock a tremendous amount of potential for the orthopedic community for practicing evidence-based medicine. So first, a little bit about PatientIQ. We're a healthcare technology company. We are founded in Chicago, and we were founded in 2016. And what we strive to do as a technology vendor is to empower orthopedic surgeons in your practices to practice what we call as data-driven medicine. Data-driven medicine is this very simple idea that using technology, we can help a busy orthopedic surgeon collect outcomes on every single patient that walks through the doors of your clinics and ORs. For all of us that have tried collecting data in our practices, we know it could be very time intensive. And there's a long history in orthopedics where we valued collecting outcomes data, but it's usually the workflows and the burden on the staff for why these programs aren't successful. So at PatientIQ, we are striving to build technology that integrates with your medical record to make this easy, but also to modernize and improve the patient experience as well. So first, just to give you a sense of some of the wonderful partners that we work with at PatientIQ. We work with all sorts of hospitals and health systems. We work with large health systems and academic medical centers. We work with private practice physicians. And one thing that we've learned after deploying more than 300 patient-reported outcomes programs across the orthopedic community is that each orthopedic surgeon has slightly different workflows and goals and needs for what they're trying to accomplish with their data. But the one thing that is consistent among all of these hospitals is that it requires a seamless workflow in your clinics where we can collect data without slowing you down and burdening the surgeons. And this is where we've learned a lot about what it takes to integrate into your clinical workflows. So our relationship with the AAOS is something that we're very excited about at PatientIQ, and it's rather new. We formally partnered with the Academy last fall, and what we were brought in to help them with, which is to build their next generation fracture and trauma registry. As everyone in this audience likely knows, the AAOS is leading the way in orthopedics registry data collection. They currently have 5 registries, and these cover most of the major orthopedic surgeries performed in the US. They have the American Joint Replacement Registry, the American Spine Registry. They have fracture and trauma, which I'll be speaking about today, shoulder and elbow, and then finally they have the musculoskeletal tumor registry. The fracture and trauma registry, we've decided we want to use it as a prototype for what a next generation registry could look like and how this could solve some of the historical challenges of getting large registry adoption by providers out in the field. So at PatientIQ, what we bring to the table and where our expertise lies is building and designing these world-class patient-reported outcomes programs at high-volume orthopedic practices, large and small. We really specialize in integrating these into your electronic health records and automating the workflows because ultimately that's what it takes to make them successful. But the most exciting part of our role at PatientIQ is not the collection, it's actually making the data actionable to you, the surgeon, and your patients. So now I want to just take a moment to talk about what are the building blocks of a next generation registry. So I think most of us are aware of the idea of a registry is first we all agree we want to get together and we want to pool our data because we understand that by pooling our data, we can learn much quicker as an orthopedic community. And the AAOS obviously firmly believes in this in their thought leadership for advancing evidence-based care in orthopedics. So I think most folks will agree there's value in a registry, but I think we all are also very realistic that historically there are challenges to making registries successful. To make a registry actually fulfill on its mission to help evidence-based medicine it's easier said than done. So in my opinion, there's one root cause on why most registries fail. And that's because it is inefficient, too time-intensive, and expensive for each of the participating sites, the doctors in the clinic, to collect the data and submit it to the registry. Because it disrupts your workflows, it slows down your IT staff, and there's competing initiatives for your time, and that's not going to go away. So most registries fail at step one, which is getting high quality data submitted on a regular basis from the participants. So with the next generation FTR registry, that's where we want to start. First, we want to design an entirely different way where we can actually extract data directly from the medical record and capture the data directly from patients in a workflow optimized for them so we don't slow down the busy orthopedic surgeon. So I'll be talking about how we do this very tactically in a moment. The next core component of a modern registry, though, is now that we have data, and maybe we have data across hundreds of thousands of cases across the United States, the next thing we want to do is get the feedback loop back to the surgeon as quick as possible. We call this real-time insights. You could think of this as one of your patients that you're treating in your clinic, and now you can see how they're recovering from their surgery. It would be quite powerful if we could be learning about the hundreds of thousands of patients that came right before them. And to me, that's the true potential of a modern registry. And then finally, registries need to be open for collaboration, whether that's for research or whether that is for collaboration with industry. There's many opportunities where as an orthopedic community, we can move the field forward. And that's all starts with a solid infrastructure for running the registry. So now specifically for fracture and trauma. So starting about 6 months ago, we've been working with the AAOS engineering team and their registry steering committee on building and designing the next generation fracture and trauma registry. So what's actually different? So the registries today, the way a site participates is they sign up, and then they have to come up with an internal strategy for how they're going to pull all of that data from their medical record to send it to the AAOS to participate. It's a time-intensive process, and it requires a lot of effort from the local IT staff, and this is where there's been challenges in adoption and data quality. So the next generation FTR registry is going to come with a new option for participation. This is where sites will be able to install PatientIQ, which is an EHR integrated application that will automatically extract data from the medical record, and I'll explain in a minute how we do this. Then we will offload the burden of taking raw EHR data, normalizing it, which we call as translating it, to get it into the FTR data specs that the AAOS requires so that data can be useful and valuable for their reporting and analytics. And then lastly, we will help the sites on an automated basis to submit the data, which we believe will occur every month. So really what we're trying to achieve, and this is a never-ending pursuit, is to minimize the burden on the surgeons, the burden on the sites, and to minimize duplicate data entry and leverage data that exists in the chart, in the medical record, whenever that's possible. And to me, the way you do this is with technology. The good news, though, is that there are some industry trends that are in our favor. So I'm not sure if all of you are aware, but in 2016, there was some pretty important legislation passed in the United States called the 21st Century Cures Act. What this act mandated is that every certified EHR technology in the US needs to support what is called FHIR. And they put a shot clock on it. And that shot clock just came due. It was December 2022. Every EHR now needs to be able to support this new API protocol. So what is FHIR? FHIR is Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. Said differently, it's a protocol or a language that now all healthcare IT systems are mandated to be able to communicate in the same language. So PatientIQ, we're a healthcare IT system. Our database and protocols are built to the FHIR standard, and now so are Epic databases, Cerner databases, and all of the other EMRs that the orthopedic community uses. So what this allows us to now do, which wasn't possible a few years ago, is we can automatically pull discrete data from the medical records such as patient demographics, encounter information. So for fracture and trauma, we're going to need to know details of that encounter for, let's say, a patient who underwent an ankle surgery. We're going to need to know the CPT codes and the ICD-10 codes associated with that surgical event. We'll also be able to pull information about the patient's payer, about their vitals, where we can pull their BMI, and then case level data about OR entry and exit times. Coincidentally, these are the same data requirements for FTR, but now we have a solution that we can present to our community for an easier way to participate. So I thought it might be helpful just to give a real-world example. So Stanford Medicine is one of the early pilot sites that's rolling out the next generation fracture and trauma registry. So at Stanford, first, the way that they now install PatientIQ lives in what's called the Epic App Orchard. You could think of this as something similar to the App Store on your iPhone. Stanford IT goes into the Epic App Orchard, they search for PatientIQ, and then they download our application into their local Epic environment. The application comes pre-installed with Fire APIs that allow us to pull and sync data from Epic automatically. So let's walk through a patient case example. For a patient, John Doe, who presents to Stanford Orthopedics, let's say this patient was scheduled for an ankle fracture surgery. The way that case is scheduled in Epic is it's booked as a surgical encounter in op time. In real time, PatientIQ will sync that data about the patient in the case, as well as the associated diagnoses that this was an ankle lateral fracture. We will automatically use a rules engine to scan this patient in case to see if it's eligible for enrollment in the FTR. The FTR has certain enrollment criteria. Because this patient's ICD-10 code meets our inclusion criteria, and this is one of the cases that we care about, we're going to now automatically enroll that patient in the FTR registry. This requires zero staff intervention. It doesn't require the surgeons or anyone at Stanford to take any actions at this point. Now that the patient is enrolled in FTR, the next thing we have to enable is the automated data collection from both the EHR system, but then also the patient. So we schedule the patient-reported outcomes to be sent to the patient before they get their fracture repaired. And this all happens in real time. So the patient's point of view, they get an automated email, and it's going to look and feel as if it's coming not only from Stanford, but directly from their surgeon. And this email is going to guide the patient through their upcoming surgical encounter. We'll provide education and content to prepare this patient for their surgery, but most importantly, we will also capture the required patient-reported outcome measures that are required for the registry. Once we capture those surveys, we score the assessments in real time. And if you remember, the second part of a modern registry is making the insights real time. So now we need to get those scores back in front of the surgeon so you can use it as part of your clinical care. So how do we solve that? The next part of our solution is we've built what are called Smart on Fire embeddable applications in the medical record. So this is an example of Stanford where their medical record is Epic. When the provider at the point of care, when you open up the chart to look at John Doe, on the right 1/3 of the screen in Epic Hyperspace, you're now going to see PatientIQ embedded. That's where you're going to be able to review John Doe's preoperative patient-reported outcome scores, and you also can see how this patient benchmarks against other patients with the same diagnosis who are scheduled for the same procedure. And this follow-up will continue as we collect 3 months post-op, 6 months post-op, and 1 year post-op data. All of those insights will be available at your fingertips. So what we're very excited about in this partnership with the AAOS is that we're now going to have an offering for the orthopedic community to make it much easier. What we believe will one day be a turnkey solution to participate not just in FTR, but in also future data collection initiatives that are spearheaded by the Academy. So I'll pause now to see if there are any questions from the audience. And thank you so much for your time and attention. That's correct. So each site that participates, not only will the data be submitted automatically to the Academy, where they can use that data to write their wonderful annual reports where they do statistical analysis, but each site will also have access to their own local data, where you can either download it and do your own statistics. We also have some analytics tools in the application as well for your own discovery of your own data. So this is a continuum. So back when we were first founded in 2016, these EHR integration projects were much more timely and much more costly than they are today. With the adoption of FHIR, what we're seeing in the EHR technology community is timelines and costs are both being condensed. So a typical installation, and this is an average, could be between 4 to 12 weeks, depending on the local capabilities of that hospital and their IT team. But it is relatively achievable and it's much lower cost. The one thing that we benefit from is we have a real, in this example, I'll use the Stanford example. So we integrate directly with the clinical and surgical schedule natively in Epic. So when that patient, let's say it's a hip fracture that's going to be repaired in the OR, when that case has to get booked in Epic OpTime. The second that case gets booked in OpTime, we have a real-time integration, so we sync the data with PatientIQ. In that case could be in 2 hours. We'll get that data immediately. We'll put it through the rules engine and we'll determine this is a hip fracture that we care about. It meets our eligibility for one of our registries, and that registry will know it needs preoperative data before the surgery. All of that can happen in a matter of minutes, meaning the patient will be assigned an email and a text message to their phone while they're laying in the bed. And then they can be advised by the staff to complete that assessment on their phone. They also can be provided a tablet or a shared device to go through the workflow as well. Trauma, though, is quite difficult, to be honest, versus elective procedures where we have a little bit more lead time. Pre-op is quite difficult, especially with patients who may be incapacitated. It absolutely requires buy-in from the clinical teams and the staff. So I don't want to diminish their role in the success of an outcomes program. What the technology can do is it can set the base cadence. That patient will get assigned a survey, and that will happen automatically. So we're going to get 100% enrollment. But to get 100% capture, that does require the staff engagement.
We do have orders in that order staff to get sent, and it's like that, so you connected to one of these preoperative order that we have. That might be a realistic risk.
Yeah, I completely agree. And on that Smart on FHIR app that I showed was embedded in Epic, we actually can surface alerts in there to alert a staff member that there's a patient in the exam room that is, not, let's say, non-compliant with the survey. It's a great question. So a pediatric patient population could be, it's definitely more complex. It typically will go, it depends on the exact scenario. Some children's hospitals do it slightly differently. The general rule of thumb is we send it to the parent or the legal guardian. If it is a 12-year-old or above, we have a workflow where they can complete the surveys directly, but it typically goes to the parent. Thank you. I think this will be time for the last question. So I don't want to, speak about a specific vendor, but there are other vendors that collect patient-reported outcomes data. So first, from the AAOS's initiative, this is open where you can use any technology to participate in fracture and trauma. You do not need to use PatientIQ to participate. What this will benefit you, though, is it will become easier to participate because the data will be automatically mapped to how the AAOS needs to receive it. And that's usually where it gets quite resource intensive. So there will be, I would say, competitive advantages to using PatientIQ, but it absolutely would not be required. So it is available to other disciplines of medicine. I'll answer that one first. So PatientIQ, we do roll it out in virtually every medical specialty beyond orthopedics. We are not available outside of the US yet, but it is in our growth plan. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.